And at this point in time, we're about to have a keynote address from a keynote speaker, Dr. Haffar.
There was a program that I used to do in the US called the Gifted and Talented Education. And the focus was on what it is that young people can do. And it started with the first grade, and that has been the motivation for what it is that I do here. But I would like us to start off with a little video to show what junior high school students can do.
Yes. And they've taken particular interest in physics. So we give them the opportunity to build this themselves. We, as a school, provided all these things, and we give them the opportunity with little supervision to build this themselves. Can you off it and start it again?
This is powered by the battery cell, so it can't go off.
Yes. What type of cell is this?
So this is a light emitting diode.
A light emitting diode. Good.
And so this is a bulb, and this is a motorized fan.
A motorized fan. Good.
It's a slide switch.
This one is what?
Slide.
A slide switch. Okay. So to make the fan work, what do we do?
You need to put on the slide switch to let the power flow through the motorized fan, through the slide switch, and into the bulb.
To the bulb. Okay. So demonstrate to us how you light the bulb.
By just putting the fan.
So the bulb is on now, and then the fan also goes.
Fantastic.
So we are trusting that we'll be able to develop this into robotics.
Fantastic.
That is one of the major projects we want to go into next academic year. 1 whole year research into robotics, so that these students can build robots on their own. We are not interested in teaching the classroom work, everyday classroom work, 1, 2, 3, and all of that. Whatever they've studied in the class, they put it down as practicals.
God bless you.
In the end, you'll be surprised. We may have the next big thing in Africa coming from Pekinah International School.
Fantastic. God bless you. Students, JHS2 students who are using chemistry and science to produce their own soap. So the idea was that what is it that we can begin to do as entrepreneurs? So what are the practical applications of chemistry for them to really see the purpose of it? This one is a video. I teach a critical thinking course at the Accra College of Medicine. And one of the key things to be a medical doctor is to be in the community, to see whether you are really suited for that business or what is it that you can learn from it. So these are all the practical aspects of education, so that we are not doing the chew, pour, pass, forget as much.
Now, Accra College of Medicine Edida Kro esi wono mo ama wonom aboabo manfo ato nsafro afefo ese wonmame boy ne wontwemogya emfenkosie kolebu ayaresabia esanse abrebia na omanfo ekwo no ma e amogya ni ho anase dodo na ene hwere wonom kwa ewu mogya wonom eni enti
enye se wo yare nko an ese wo hu doctor ne mo ano ese wo call hospital ne yehwe wapomodin sa ne nya se wo yare an enko ye se it is in the advanced stage ene ye hu sa yare no ne mo enimanimu ya no yehu a ebetimi ehu ne aso ano ntem since ebekọ ekire ansa yehu.
As students, you're medical professional. It's a medical professional. You're all about helping people. As I say, cut your material for now. Apomudin. And I motivating and say, Yambraha, and Bebo, they will say, Nkofo, and Beshre, Yawa, Nipedriam.
Now, many times when we look at how young people should exhibit their own knowledge, this is not new. If you look at Kweji Library, how many of you are familiar with Kweji Library? Those who founded at Chimoto School. What he said is this: don't tell me what you know, show me what you can do. Now this as far back as 1925. And then when you begin to look at even education innovations, the idea is that as much as possible, education should be turned into useful products or particular kind of services that can improve people's lives. So if you look at education in Ghana, and we don't have those two things in mind, then it seems that it becomes what we call the chew, pour, pass, and forget. I remember when I was in school, in France Film School, Cape Coast, I studied French for 4 years, but I could never speak it. And there were 100 of us, and I would imagine that maybe only about 1 or 2 could speak it, because it was all theoretical, subject-verb agreement, the plural forms, and so on. Those days are gone. The important thing is, what is it that we can have young people do? Now, many times, when you go to speech days, one of the first things that you hear is the professors telling students to do this. They were asked to be problem solvers. At the end of the 4th year, Now, these kids have spent 3 years in lower primary. They spent 3 years in upper primary. How many years is that? How many years is that? Now, they spent 3 years in junior high school. How many years is that? Now, 3 years in secondary school. How many years is that? How many? 12. And then 4 years at the university. How many years is that? At the end of it all, they become a problem solver. So these are the challenges that are facing us, that the earlier we groom them to be doers, the better. Now, this is a typical Ghana classroom. How many of you have seen this? That's how we're all raised. You sit and you listen. And then you try as much as possible to memorize what has been taught to you, and hopefully you remember and produce them in an exam so you can pass it. Things have changed. Now, if you look at this particular kid right here, do you think he's going to come to school tomorrow? Many times we look at absenteeism, and this is the origins of it. And then remember, there's no teacher there. Now, this was a program that I was doing in a village near Kumasi. And what I did was to, frankly, almost beg the head person, let the kids use computers, but they had computers there. But they've covered the computers up with blankets and bed sheets. And the rationale is that if you let them use it, they will spoil the computers. So I had to really beg. I wasn't on my knees, but I was begging that the only time these kids can spoil the computers if they pick them up and drop them. So these are what we should be looking for. Now, this is something that we really need to look at, and I think it's serious. There was this book by a Brazilian educator called, do you remember his name? Paulo, who said that? Give the young lady a hand. And he called it the banking forms of education. And look, when we are children, we are taught how to sit and listen. And by the time we are grown up and we are working in places, we expect to be told what to do. So that an elephant sees the rope as a kid, get used to it, and when they become 10 tons, as soon as he sees the rope, what does it do? It stops thinking. So these are the serious times and some of the things that we can begin to look at. Now, this is the same kid here. We moved them from the sitting posture behind the computer, and you see the excitement in their faces. Is he going to come to school tomorrow? Yeah. Because there's a purpose. But then the purpose has to be defined. Look at this. You know what this is? These are files in Kolebu Teaching Hospital. And this is just some of it. In fact, many times when you go there, they ask you to take your own files with you. Because if you don't bring it with you and you think you can retrieve it from here, you will die. These are the challenges that are facing us. On the other hand, now check this. This is a picture that I took in another hospital, Confanochi Hospital, Kumasi. I taken my mother there. This is the X-ray files. I mean, you haven't seen this? If you haven't seen this, next time you go to these polyclinics, government setups, you see them. But then, why? Look at this. I was doing a training in a particular district. And this is the school of, how do you call it? A department of Ministry of Education. And this is their filing system. And we have children who are boxed behind desks. And with this pen drive, all of this information can fit on there. All we have to do is develop what? A template. So again, if you look at the number of kids in our classrooms, and these are the 2013 statistics. Junior high school, we have about 1.5 million kids strapped behind desks, memorizing information. If you look at senior high school, including TVET, we have about 1,900,000. And then if you look at tertiary, we have about 240,000 young people. For me, these are not students, so that's a workforce. What are we preparing them to do for this country? And just to pass examinations, the challenges are such that we have to now begin to really open our eyes. And then what I'm saying is this. When we begin to look at education, we have to begin to understand the key educational outcomes. In other words, for all the education that we're getting, what is a product that we can produce? That is a question. For all the education that we are getting, what is a service that we can provide? For all the education we're getting, what is a solution to societal problem? Now, these are the parts to education that we have to begin to understand, especially when we are producing innovators who become the entrepreneurs in the future. That's why I show the beginnings of what young people in JHS2 are doing. Can you imagine that if we're doing this across the country, from Accra all the way to Gwa, Upper West, Upper East, can you imagine the changes that will happen in this country? And then after someone has been sitting behind the desk for 15 years, we place them in the ministries to go and solve problems. It will never happen. So we really have to begin to be observant in terms of what you do. Now, this is a community college in the Boston area, a 2-year community college. And I remember when I was in the US, I didn't have money to go to a regular private school. So I started off in a community college, not this one, but in Los Angeles, called the Los Angeles Southwest College. Now, in the first semester, I took history, political science, English, and that sort of thing, and I took accounting 1. The second semester, I took other courses again, including accounting 2. Now, after 1 year of being a junior high school, I could work as a bookkeeper. And that is how I paid my way through school. So right from the beginning, I learned how to be on my own. My mother was a housewife. My father was retired, and I wasn't bright enough to get a government scholarship. So at the end of the day, how are we preparing young people to succeed on their own? Now check this. This is the same, this is also in the Boston area. I went to do what they call the MRI, a brain scan. And I was in the lab, or in the ward, waiting for someone as old as I am, as a medical doctor, to take care of me. Then this guy shows up. 2 years of community college. He doesn't have a degree, but he knows how to operate the machines, and he was self-sufficient. So now while he was working, he's looking at ways in which he can begin to finance his own way through university. All I'm saying is this: the way we raise young people is the most important thing. But for us to think that they're going to go through education, memorizing theories, producing them, and not work a day in their lives, these are the challenges that we have to begin to look at. And also, my goodness, how do you build a person's confidence when they don't believe that they can stand on their own 2 feet? So, as we begin to raise our young people in this country, and I had the opportunity to teach all kinds of nationalities when I was in the US, Koreans, Japanese, Taiwanese, Mexicans, name them. The cognitive abilities of human beings are not that different, but it's how we raise them. You know, take a kid who is really flunking the BEC in the Upper West or Upper East and bring them to Ashesi or bring them to St. Martin de Porres. That person will change. So when we begin to look at the gray matter, the thousands and thousands and millions of young people that we are not preparing to succeed in this country, then what's our responsibility as educators? These are the larger questions that have to be addressed. Now, the other thing also, my daughter had graduated from my school, and I had a chance to visit Harvard. This was about 10 years ago. And they had introduced the innovation lab. And here is where the like minds meet. What is it that we can do to be innovative? How are we going to put our minds together to do something that's never been done before? How are we going to improve processes and that sort of thing? That mindset has to be real. We have to begin to look at that in this country. That give people the opportunity to think their own thoughts, to see what it is that they can do to improve themselves, and we can see the difference here. Now, when I came back, I went to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology to talk to these young people, and not once had they been asked, what is it that you can do? With all the knowledge that you get, and what is it that you can do? So I'm going to end on this note, that I have absolute faith in the young people in this country. If you look at some of the people who are making strides, even in NASA, one of them came from my own school, we call them Z, works for NASA. There's another one who also came from Z Blankson. There was another one who came from Adisada College. The brains are there, but our duty is how we can begin to lead the way So whenever I'm here in Ashesi, I feel great because I see that all is not lost. We can begin to make a progress. The last thing I'll tell you, and this means quite a bit to me. I remember I was at Legon. My books were in the bookstore, and I wanted to see how the books were doing. Now I had to use the restroom, the men's room, the washroom, and they pointed the place to me. Let me tell you, as I got closer and took a peek at where I was going to go, whatever I had to do left me on the spot. Under no circumstances am I going to situate myself in a place like this. But guess what? Things have changed. But when I walked through the walkway to the main road, there was a chamber in the ground. And the pipes were broken. The water chamber in the ground. The pipes were broken, and water was gushing everywhere. And nobody took a look at it. But across the road, there was a sign that said Department of Applied Sciences. Let me say, if you can apply science to flush your own loo, then what is the science for? So that's the message I will leave to you. So when I come to a place like Ashesi, I feel really elated. And I thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Now, but when you look at the Ghana Education Service syllabus, we have a section on assessments. Assessments meaning that how do you test knowledge? How do you test that someone has fulfilled the requirements? One way to do it, true, false, multiple choice, essay writing, but there's another one which nobody practices. It's in the Ghana Education Service syllabus. It's called product. What is the product that is going to be produced at the end of this session? But the difficulty is this. Is WIAC situated to test that? You know, we can also call it a form of formative assessment. Here, we don't do any formative assessment, except that what we have called a summative assessment. That, my friend, you didn't pass the BEC, you can't go to Wesley Girls, you can't go here. That's a punitive kind of assessment. But what we have to do now is to look at how we can use children's own products as a form of assessment. Because that's how we learn. We learn by what it is that we'll be able to do with our hands. But whether WIAC will be able to test that is the issue. But I'll tell you this. When Nkrumah introduced University of Cape Coast, that was the idea. The idea was, how do we develop teachers who will be able to teach young people to apply knowledge? No knowledge is being applied in this country. How much knowledge is being applied in this country? I took a trip. I was in Thailand some time ago, last year or so. They make everything. They make their singlets, they make their underwear, they make their own soap, they make their own beans, they make everything. You go into their department stores, I will tell you about 90% are made there. So there's no drag on the local currency. Here, we have to import everything. But all I'm saying is this, and that's the point that you're making here. It will be difficult to make the adjustments as a single individual. We need policies that will make these things happen. And we know that we've been doing this theoretical thing since 1947, when the University of Ghana was formed. And we're still doing that thing, and we are not getting results for it. It makes no sense that we're going to continue along a path that is not working. So when we meet a gathering like this, we are all evangelists. To spread the word, you know, I have a column in the Graphic that comes every Monday. And these are the things that we're trying to begin. I've been doing for the past 10 years or so. But it's beginning to filter through the system. Especially when I dared to say that we have to learn children use smartphones. Because there's more information on the smartphone than any teacher in Ghana can provide for you. Into your house. So anyway, these are the larger challenges. But we can't give up. We can't give up. Thank you.
I think we're also talking about our teachers and the fear of technology. Now here we are in a digital generation, but we have analog mindsets. What are we going to do? And I'll give you one little example. Do you remember when Mobitel was introduced in this country? How many of you remember that? You guys are old though. The bills came denominated in dollars that were charged for CDs. You speak for a second, you charge for 1 minute in dollars. And I remember one day, I was looking at the bill, and it was high. It was quite high.
But I realized that there's a way to lock the telephone, the mobile phone. As I was looking at it, my little girl shows up. She must have been about that high. I look at her, and she looks at me, and I look at the phone. I say, Daddy, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to lock it? The next question is, do you know how? Now I ask him. I didn't know how. Say, now, do you want me to teach you? You won't believe us. Say, Daddy, do you see the key to the top left-hand corner? That says lock. So I says, I press it. I press it. Say, does it say unlock? I say, yes, it's locked. And then she turned like she was going away. Now, do you know how to unlock it? Do you want me to teach you? This is where we are now. We have about 300,000 teachers in the public system. And how many of them are computer savvy? That is a question. 10%, 5%, maybe 1%. So where do we go? So these are the larger questions that we have to ask. That's why whoever asks you to write it down, that's all he knows. That's how he was raised. That's why he's accepted. And to work smart, for him, is to see that paper in your hand. So you're going to work smart all by yourself. So that's the larger issue. So, frankly, when we come to a school like this, and then I think if there's a possibility that we can really bring some of the ICT teachers here, or even the principals. Because let me tell you how we select principals in this country, or headmasters or headmistresses. He taught mathematics for 20 years. He taught chemistry for 35 years. They've retired and they brought them back. Where are we going to go with all this? To be a manager of a school is a different skill set that are needed. So that's how we have to do it. I remember in the US, for example, you have a credential to teach and you have a credential to be a school manager. The two are not the same. But, we are getting there. We are getting there. When these things were first introduced, there was a lot of hesitance from your analog people. But now, the time has come where I think that we really have to begin to bring in the principles now. Now, the last thing I will say is this. Do you remember what I was saying about this principal who didn't want the kids to touch the computers? The reason was that he himself was afraid of the computers. Osro. But it wasn't just him. This was a program that I was doing from Accra all the way to the north, in the Mampusi area. So you know what we did? We collected all the principals and brought them to Kumasi. Said today, before this day is over, this fear of computers in it there, it has to go. And you'll be surprised. Some of them went and bought their own laptops. And they were never analog again. So these are the larger questions. But then there has to be a national movement that we can't skip technology. We cannot skip the computer. So again, when we're looking at those who are coming out of the universities now to start teaching themselves, from Winneba, University of Education Winneba, or from University of Cape Coast, how many of them can come and use computers to teach the courses that they're teaching? And these are the new ones. I'm not talking about the old ones. So these, some of you are laughing. It's serious. These are the larger questions that have to be addressed. But it's possible. Because like I said, I've had the opportunity to teach all kinds of nationalities. Our cognitive abilities in Ghana are no different than cognitive abilities anywhere. But then how do we raise a crop of people who develop their confidence, know that they can do it, and they are working towards being better than they are? These are the larger issues that I think. My daughter, who taught me how to use my phone, she was about 6. But I never deprived her of it. We should not underestimate our influence on our own children. We have to begin to understand that. But again, we cannot use a smartphone in a haphazard manner. They use it any which way you want. There's a way in which it can be structured. When do we use it? When don't we use it? When we bring it to school? And that sort of thing. It's more cost-effective than to want to equip a whole room of computer lab, which you cannot afford. So what I'm saying is this. We have to be up to speed in terms of what it is that we have to do. But we can't underestimate the power of young people to teach the parents, the teachers themselves. Let me tell you, I teach a course in critical thinking at Accra College of Medicine. It's all learner-centered, and these are medical students who now bring in the various diseases and how those diseases are resolved through the YouTube. And they have it there. All we do is provide them with the speakers and a screen so they teach each other. Let me tell you, in one semester, you'll be surprised how many diseases were identified by the students themselves and how the curing processes took place, the diagnosis and everything else. No teacher in the world can teach that, except when we begin to understand this. Learner-centered teaching is there whether we like it or not. There will always be the flip side, where someone might go where they're not supposed to go. But then if there's a way in which we can restrict the use of it for that purpose.
How many of you have been knocked on the head before?
Yeah, mental.
Hey! Oh, you too? This is a new day. But my last point is this. Love your children. Love them. They didn't ask to be born. You knew how they got here. They had nothing to do with it. And love your students. Because they are looking up to you to make a difference. But guess what? Unless you begin to add value to yourself as a teacher, you can't add value to anybody else. Let's remember that last point. That again, I turned 70 last year. But I'm studying now more than I've ever done in my life. That I check her to see if she too is doing it. It becomes a two-way street. We've created a learning environment among ourselves. So that's my last word for you. Thank you.